Hey everybody, welcome to Wednesday night Bible study. We're studying through the book of John, and actually this week we're kicking off John chapter 11. Pastor Tom finished off last week John chapter 10, and I'm picking up John chapter 11. And we're going to actually only be looking at two verses this week, verses 1 and 2. And I'm just going to read those two verses and then get into it. So verse 1 says this: A man named Lazarus was sick. He lived in Bethany with his sisters, Mary and Martha. This is the Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. Her brother, Lazarus, was sick. So obviously, this whole section is about Lazarus. But I thought it was quite interesting that in the first two verses, they just mentioned that Lazarus is sick, but then they actually give you a bit more background. They talk a bit more about Mary and Martha. So a man named Lazarus was sick. He lived in Bethany with his sisters, Mary and Martha. So then what came to me there was the account in Luke chapter 10, 38 to 42, which says this: As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. So she's welcoming Jesus into her home, and by default, all his disciples come with him, right? Her sister, Mary, sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted, take note of that, by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. But the Lord said to her, My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. So what I think is interesting is the fact that in this account, Luke specifically points out that Martha was distracted. So Mary has discovered the real reason the Lord is there, and Luke obviously knows it because he points out the fact that Mary is distracted from. If she's being distracted, it means she's being distracted from something, right? You can deduce this, that if she's being distracted from something. Now, the point is, what is she being distracted from? And what she's being distracted from is being concerned about the Lord, the person of Jesus Christ. Mary was concerned about the person of Jesus Christ because she sat at his feet. She didn't just sit in the room. She sat at his feet. She got as close to Jesus as she could to listen to what he was teaching, right? Martha was distracted. She wasn't catching any of it. She was taking care of dinner. And any reasonable person would say, right, well, dinner's important, right? But you know what? Martha could have sat down, listened to Jesus as well, and then after, when he was done, they could have all gotten together and prepared dinner, all of them having partaken of the person of Jesus Christ, especially when he was teaching in person there, right? So the reasonable people that are more reasonable, more practical would say, but dinner needed to be prepared. And then really you think, well, did it need to be prepared at that very moment when the Lord was teaching? If Jesus Christ was here right now in your house and you said, oh, come for dinner. And then he says, well, and he starts speaking. Are you going to just continue on making dinner? Or are you going to say, hold up, you know what? We're going to put dinner on pause. We're going to go listen to what Jesus has to say. And then we're going to go get back to work after that. So we have to think about this. I was at a conference earlier this week. Was it this week? Last week. Sorry, it was last week. And anyways, a pastor came up from Spain, a friend of mine, and he talked about the ways Satan attacks us. And the fifth way he said Satan attacks us is that he distracts us. He not just distracts us, he specifically distracts us and wants to take us away from the person of Jesus Christ. He's distracting us so that our eyes do not perceive the person of Jesus Christ, but are distracted away from that and don't even see Jesus. That's what the devil wants. The devil does not want us to perceive the person of Jesus Christ and get to know the person of Jesus Christ better, which is exactly what Martha was doing. She was getting to know him better because she got right up there, close and personal, to get to know him. And how do we get to know Jesus Christ? By listening to his words. It says in the Bible, John chapter 1, it says, the Word is God and the Word was God. So I mean, Jesus Christ is the Word of God. it's not 100% synonymous, but Jesus Christ and the words of God, the Bible, go hand in hand. You want to get to know Jesus better, you listen to his words if you were there in person, or in our case, we read his words. That's how we get to know Jesus better. And then moving on to verse 2. It says, "This is the Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was sick." So right now, I feel the Lord wants us to pay attention to what Mary is doing before we get to Lazarus. Because if you see, Lazarus is like, not an afterthought, but it is after the most... Right now, the most important point is that Mary, he's pointing out the different things she did just in these 2 verses. And you can go back to Matthew chapter 26, verses 6 to 13. I'm going to read that now to get the account of when she poured the perfume on the Lord's feet. It says, "Meanwhile, Jesus was in Bethany at the home of Simon, a man who had previously had leprosy. While he was eating, a woman came in with a beautiful alabaster jar of expensive perfume and poured it over his head. The disciples were indignant when they saw this. 'What a waste!' they said. 'It could have been sold for a high price and the money given to the poor.' But Jesus, aware of this, replied, 'Why criticize this woman for doing such a good thing to me? You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. She has poured this perfume on me to prepare my body for burial. I tell you the truth, wherever the good news is preached throughout the world, this woman's deeds will be remembered and discussed.'" So, like I said in verse 1, it says, Jesus said, "Mary has discovered it and it will not be taken away from her." What did Mary discover? Mary discovered something in both of these accounts, verse 1 and verse 2. And I believe what she discovered is actually illustrated in Matthew chapter 6, verse 33, which says, "Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need." Mary discovered that having an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ meant you no longer had to worry. Because if you read the rest of Matthew chapter 6, it basically talks about the Lord taking care of the birds of the field and the flowers and stuff. And they don't worry about what they're going to dress like. They don't worry about what they're going to eat or where they're going to sleep. They let the Lord take care of it. They have 100% trust in their Creator taking care of them. And this is what Mary has discovered. She has 100% trust in her Creator, Jesus Christ, taking care of her. It doesn't mean that she doesn't work. It doesn't mean that she doesn't do her just duties. It doesn't mean that she isn't a practical person. It means that she knows the priorities. The practical stuff comes after Jesus Christ. Another part I want to remind us of is this. It's spoken of in Matthew chapter 13, verse 22. It's spoken of in Mark chapter 4, verses 18 and 19. And it's spoken of in Luke chapter 8, verse 14. And that's the parable of the sower sowing seed. And different seed falls on different types of ground. But I specifically want to look at the seed that fell among the thorns, because it is easily choked out by the worries of this life. Mary was not this kind of seed. Okay? So we need to attain to what Mary had found, discovered. She was not easily distracted, right? She was not that she wasn't concerned with taking care of herself and eating and clothing and things like that, but she wasn't distracted by those things away from the person of Jesus Christ. So what I wrote down was this, basically, and she wasn't like the seed that fell among the thorns and was easily choked up by the worries of this life. She wasn't worried. God will take care of me. I will go to work. I will do what I'm supposed to do. I'll clean the house and I will feed the people and I'll prepare meals. But those things don't worry me. I'm not necessarily concerned. So concerned with those things that they consume me. I'm not going to let them distract me, right? So Mary wasn't concerned about the things of this world, in the sense, like the seed among the thorns. What she was concerned about was the person of Jesus Christ. And she didn't care if her acts of love for the Lord were considered by others to be extravagant. That, like they said, perfume that cost a year's wages Whoa, that's pretty extravagant. And she broke it open and poured it over his head to anoint him. That's how much she loved him. She would give something so precious away, right? She was determined to bless the Lord for saving her life, because that's what she's done. Remember? Now Mary is looking forward to the Messiah dying on the cross for her sins. So she's trusting him that he will die on the cross, and that will save her life from her sinfulness, right? Through Christ's sacrifice on the cross. But she was determined to bless the Lord for saving her life. She blessed him with her full attention and extravagant shows of love. Now that shows that you love somebody, right? If you're talking to your spouse, husband or wife, possible girlfriend, fiance, right? Do they feel loved when they're talking to you and you're half listening, or you're not even listening at all? Do they feel loved? No. When do they feel loved? When you've given them your full attention. And you know when else they feel loved? When you give them extravagant shows of love, flowers and chocolates, and you take them somewhere and take them to a nice meal, and you do things with them, go on a picnic. Those are shows of love. Sometimes in some of our financial situations might be extravagant, actually, but those kinds of things will show someone you love them, right? And Mary was determined to show her Lord that she loved him. She loved him for what he would do on the cross for her. And that's faith. Because she hadn't done it yet, but she knew that he would, and she loved him for it. So my question for you tonight is this. Where are you? How are you showing the Lord that you love him? Are you easily distracted from the person of Jesus Christ and who he is? Are you giving the Lord in your life your full attention? Are you showing extravagant love towards him? And the other thing is, if you want to show extravagant love towards the Lord, how do you do that? What are extravagant shows of love to the Lord? How do you show him you love him? So just want to leave you with that tonight. Think about it. Pray about it. Make a change in your life, if that's what it means. It might not be a big change, or it might be a big change. But you know what? Any change for the Lord is a fantastic way to do things. All right. God bless you guys. Have a good night. We'll see you next week.